Just dropped my Bible. I've got to find my place again. So, we are in Revelation chapter 3, verses 7 to 13, and it's the Church of Philadelphia. Now, this one is actually a hard one to title because the other church is Dead Church, Corrupt Church, Lukewarm Church, but this one has got a few names that you could title it. In my Bible, it's the Faithful Church. It's called the Church of Brotherly Love. In the past, I've referred to it as a church with an open door or a church with a promise. So there's lots of good names that you can call this. So let's not worry about titling the church, and let's talk a little bit about it. Now, this is the second to last church. And you can say that this date begins in 1730 if we're looking at that historical symbolism that we get from these churches. That's the beginning of the Great Awakening, the first Great Awakening. And, there was the first Great Awakening, the second Great Awakening, and many other revivals that have really swept the world in the last few centuries. 1852, a great revival. We see April 9th of 1914, I think. 1905? I forget. It's on my birthday, though. I knew that much. Of the Azusa Street revival in Southern California. Later in the 70s, we saw the Jesus movement. And then there's been smaller revivals, all Hebrews revivals, and revivals here and there. And so we've seen many revivals, and this church describes the Great Awakening and the great missionary movement that happened in that period as well. The Moravians had a conviction to start a prayer meeting at their church. They didn't want the church to be unmanned, and they felt just as the fire and the smoke before the altar of the Lord at the temple and the tabernacle was never to go out, so too their prayers that ascended to the Lord should never go out. So they began a rotation of people praying at their church. That prayer meeting went for over 100 years. And from them, they sent out missionaries all over the world, making great converts. And it's people like them who are the ones who impacted people like John Wesley and Whitefield and more. And those guys then went out and became some of the greatest revival preachers the world has ever seen. And so that's the time period. There's no real end to it because we still today see the lasting effect of that time period. And we still see people who are trying to continue on that work. Faithfulness, seeing revivals, spirit-filled, Bible-based, prayerful service to the Lord. And so let's check out what it says. And to the angel of the church of Philadelphia, write. And Philadelphia means brotherly love. And so there you go, if you didn't know that one. These things is he who is holy, he who is true, he who has the key of David, who opens and no one shuts, and shuts and no one opens. That's a reference to Isaiah 22:22. You can go check that out. But it was a king to the treasury. And so I don't think it's the idea that literal, again, this is where when you know your Old Testament and you understand that that's an almost direct quote of Isaiah 22:22, it's a reference to the treasury. So the storehouses of God. And that's the idea, is just that Jesus, he's holy, he's true, and he's got the keys to the storehouses for you. He says, I know your works. See, I have set an open door before you, or before you have set an open door, and no one can shut it. For you have a little strength, have kept my word, and have not denied my name. Oh, what do I have here? Let's just take a look. Let's just look at Colossians 4, because that's going to be our reading in 2 days for the McShane Bible reading plan. Colossians chapter 4, verse 3, or 2 to 6, really, though. So Paul is praying. He says, continue earnestly in prayer, be vigilant in it with thanksgiving, meanwhile praying for us. So Paul requesting prayer that God would open to us a door for the word, to speak the mystery of Christ, for which I am also in chains, that I may make it manifest as I ought to speak. Walk in wisdom to those who are on the outside, redeeming the time. Let your speech always be seasoned, be with grace, seasoned with salt, that you may know how you ought to answer each one. The idea of that open door, really, we have an open door still today. And God doesn't ask much from you. You'll notice this Church of Philadelphia, it wasn't boasting of their great works and of their great love and their great faithfulness and their great this and well, I guess faithful was one of the things, but it wasn't about them having all this amazing stuff to offer God. He says, I know you have a little strength, but you've kept my word and you haven't denied my name. You might not have a whole lot to offer, but you're offering what you have. And that's what God's looking for. I'll say that again. You might not have a lot to offer, but you're offering what you have. That's what God is looking for. And for those people, God says, I will set before you an open door, and no one can shut this door. That means that if you're willing to offer to God whatever it is you have to give, that no one and no thing of heaven and hell and earth and anywhere can shut the door of where God wants you to go. This also should give us confidence that if I am offering God all that I have, that I am where I need to be, and that the door is right there in front of me, and I just need to walk on through and just continue stepping through the open doors as God places them in front of me. And so it's very simple. Don't deny his name. Keep his word and just offer up what we have. He says, indeed, I'll make those of the synagogue of Satan who say they are Jews and are not, but lie. Indeed, I'll make them to come and worship before your feet and to know that I have loved you. And the idea is that one day God will right the wrongs. One day every knee will bow and every tongue confess. But you have to understand, some of that is not written like for us. It's written for them. People who call themselves religious, but they really aren't. Even the Jews here, and it's the idea is that saying, people who think they worship the one true God. That was the idea back then. There wasn't really that much false Christians. They were coming, but it wasn't a big deal yet. Most people were either Christian or not. Today, though, but back then there were Jews who would have claimed they worshiped the same God, and in a sense they did, but they rejected his Messiah. And so when people say, I'm worshiping God, but they do something totally different, he calls them those of the synagogue of Satan. And that's the idea, is that there might be headbutting with people who want to call themselves Christians, but they're really not. And actually they're forwarding the agenda of Satan. And it's sad, but there are churches and people who will call themselves Christians, and they are supporting agendas that are nothing more than the agenda of Satan. And it is what it is. But one day, while we, Revelation 20, co-reign with Christ, they will kneel and bow before him, and they will recognize that we are the ones he's loved. We are the ones that, we had it right. And we can have a confidence in that. And now, verse 10, it says, because you have kept my command to persevere, this is important, so stay with, I will also keep you from the hour of trial, which shall come upon the whole world to test those who dwell on the earth. This is one of those key verses of why I believe in a pre-tribulational rapture of the church. Why I believe that as right now we are reading and we're almost done with the things which are, chapter 4 will start off with John hearing a trumpet being whisked off into heaven. And it's the things that take place after this. And then begins chapter 4 through 19, the the tribulation period, the great tribulation, the 70th week of Daniel. There's all these names for it, right? The day of the Lord. And so there's a promise to this church that if they persevere, that he will keep them from the hour of trial. Now, here's where we can get into theology and semantics is, well, they'll just be protected through the tribulation. No, that's the different. If it said, I'll keep you from trials, that is protecting you from the trials that are taking place around you. Keeping you from the hour of trial, that's removing you from a time period. There's really no way to dance around this in the original language. Ek, from, out of, or away from. It's what it means, the hour of trial. So there's the promise. We have a promise. Now, are we escapists? Are we, no, that's just dumb. I'm just trying to believe the Bible is all I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to escape anything. I'm just trying to do what he says, persevere. And then I'm trying to believe him at his word, that he'll keep me from the hour of trial. And so you can look at Luke chapter 21. By 1, I mean 3. By 3, I mean 1. I'll flip back real quick. Drawing a quick blank. It's 1. Verse 36, watch therefore always that you may be counted worthy to escape all these things, as he just described the tribulation, that it will come to pass, and to stand before the Son of Man. Where will you be? You're going to escape all these things, and you will be standing before him in his presence. And so that's the promise to the church of Philadelphia, is that if they persevere, he will keep them from the hour of trial, that they will not be a part of all those things, and that they'll stand before him. Romans 5:9 and 1 Thessalonians 5:9 both make promises that the church, us, we're not appointed to God's wrath. And yet, throughout the whole Bible, it makes it very clear that the day of the Lord is where he pours out his wrath on the unjust. And so, yeah, it's not hard to make a case for this. And once again, if we just try and take the Bible literally and believe God at what he's saying and read it plainly, that's kind of where we end up. He tells them in verse 11, behold, I am coming quickly. Hold fast what you have, that no one may take your crown. Now, quickly again is that takus word. It's the speed of his coming, not the timing of his coming. We talked about imminency like back on like day 1 or 2 of Revelation. But the point is that it's that you won't have time to change anything. When it's time for him to come, he's coming. And you've got about as much time to react as you do to dodge a lightning bolt. Best of luck to you, right? Better to be doing now what we know we ought to be doing, so that we are found in his presence and in his will when he comes, so that no one takes a crown. I'm going to read my little tiny notes I have written here. 1 Corinthians 9:25, the incorruptible crown. 1 Thessalonians 2:19, the crown of rejoicing. James 1:12 and Revelation 2:10, the crown of life. 1 Peter 5:4, the crown of glory. 2 Timothy 4:8, the crown of righteousness. There's some good stuff. So maybe if you go back and listen to this later and go check those verses out, there are different crowns that are talked about being rewarded for different things. I could back up to verse 2:10, where it talks about the crown of the faithful crown, the crown of life. So this was given, though, for those who are martyrs. So you might not get all 5 crowns. But it's a crown promised to the martyrs, a special thing in heaven, and I think they deserve it, frankly. That in heaven, that they will be recognized forevermore and for eternity, that they gave their lives. They gave their physical lives on this earth for him and did not deny his name. That's worthy of a crown. But Paul talks about other crowns. Peter talks about crowns that are stored up for us. And hey, what are crowns for? Ring toss. We're going to cast them before him. And so that's part of the promise and the warning Take heed that no one takes your crown, because it's a reward, and we can lose rewards. He who overcomes, I'll make him a pillar in the temple of my God. He shall go out no more. I will write on him the name of my God and the name of the city of my God, the new Jerusalem, which comes down out of heaven from my God. And I will write on him my new name. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. Most of that, if you go back and listen to my old message from a couple of years ago, I will go in depth on what all those mean. But in short, it's all just basically Jesus saying that he will possess you. He'll have his name upon you, a seal upon you. You're not going away. You're not going to be distanced from Jesus ever again. It is a beautiful promise that he will have you and keep you and hold you forevermore. And so that is the word to the faithful church of Philadelphia. May we be found to be part of that faithful church, because tomorrow we're going to hit the church that describes much of the church of this age, the lukewarm church of Laodicea. I will see you guys then.